Hello, everyone, and welcome to Temple Hayes on Fire for Life. And that is what you're getting today because we know when things are going around in life and around us, in our country, and with other people, the tendency is for a lot of people to become isolated, perhaps withdrawn. Whereas the real call, the deeper call, I feel, after the place of silence, is to come back more energetically, more determined, more helpful, and to be a lighthouse for other people, holding the space in the container of love and what is possible. Well, let me tell you, are you in for a treat today? Talk about the love vibe, the Ironman, the mountaineer, the author of 14 books. Let me see, a local clinician, sobriety exceeding right at 40 years. I mean, do I go on? Because if I do, we won't get a chance for you to talk to him today. So, anyway, my question to him is when do you sleep? So, drum roll, please. Welcome the one and only Dr. James Rouse. Thank you for being with us. We're so glad that you are here.
Temple, it is such an honor. Look at you. You look absolutely radiant as always. And I'm feeling I'm
Thank
feeling
you.
giddy blessed today. I'm giddy blessed to be with you. Thank you.
Oh, it's a privilege. And when and though you and I have been in contact through the years and I've known about you and the work you do and what you stand for, and as we know, that's always evolving. But that being said, when I met you in person, I went, wow, now this guy is on fire for life. I mean, that's your tagline right there. I'm continuing to grow into it, which is why I put something so bold. But you radiate such energy. So tell us a little bit about, or a lot about, how did you get from a place of drawing attention to yourself for the wrong reasons, which
Mm.
is I was in that club, to drawing attention to life itself and it getting your attentiveness for you to grow into the energy and the light being that you are and the difference maker.
Gosh, Temple, I think that and I really hope today's show is an invitation for all of us because I think that one of the things that we'll either talk ourselves into or talk ourselves out of the fire and the light that all of us have within. And I'm a huge believer in the physiology of light and love and fire. But I think when we're younger, and potentially in my story, Temple, there was a lot of darkness in my home,
Hmm.
most of which was in the form of addiction, alcoholism, and a way in which I I knew that part of my safety and how I was going to remain safe was how do I dim my light so I don't stick out? How do I actually not bring attention to myself? Because when I did, there was that was usually when there was going to be trouble, meaning that a parent that had drank too much, a parent that was not in a good space psychologically. Um, so I learned early on, stay out of the light, stay under the light. And if you do, you might be able to navigate, find your way through this. And if you do, then you get a chance to make some decisions based on what it is that you know as you're starting to come into this idea. I guess to call it early agency, 14, 15 years old as teenagers, when we start to kind of give ourselves permission to experiment with what does light look like? Well, at
Mhm.
that time, based on my genetic predisposition, light looked like drugs and light looked like more alcohol. So, over the next nearly 6 years, my light was always filtered through drugs and alcohol. But here's an interesting thing, Temple, and I'd love to get your take on this. I find that a lot of us who've been, spiritually on the path, even as children, when we may have been going through things, how we even when I was drinking and drugging, I still was full of light. There was still this thing that kept on through. I loved
Mhm.
people. It was a way in which I wanted to continually bring myself out. And I used drugs and alcohol as almost like a channel for coming out.
Right.
And then I know when I was really looking at my mortality right up close around age 20, I was like, oh my goodness, the preview of coming attractions is if you continue to use this as the part of your stewardship to light, you're not going to be here much longer. And that was when I had to look at the preview of coming attractions, which I looked at the form of my parents and saw a lot of the things that they struggled with, and also the things that I realized, oh my gosh, you are going to outpace them unless you really decide you are going to do the hardest, the most beautiful thing you'll ever do in your life, and that is to get sober. So that was at age 20, where I moved away from everything, all the influences, and gosh, Temple, I found myself so clumsy in all of this experience. I was clumsy in everything, but I was not clumsy in God. I was so open to the idea that if I continue to listen and continue to give myself permission to be open, I would be guided. The universe would help me to find my way. So the way in which I look at sobriety, look at light, your question around fire, how do we do it? We often say, and I think in the world of spirituality, you have to discern when you're on your own way and give yourself permission to find the true way. And I think that's really what it is. I've given myself permission to do these last 40 years. And most importantly, getting a chance to sit with you today, I think we would love to enroll as many of people who are open to this idea to look at how it is that we use our light, how if we're kind of finding ourselves flickering physiologically or emotionally, or even in our spiritual ways, how do we have predictable ways in which we can turn our light on? And that's really the thing I've become a student of these last 40 years, a predictable way to keep my light on, even when things are really hard, and even when, as all of us do, struggle, but we don't allow our light to be snuffed out.
Oh, that is profound, and I felt all the words that you said. So mine is my way or the highway, meaning the highest way, because my way can be that personal attachment, that personality, the psychology, but the highest way would be, I really might miss something if I don't allow the highest way to come through. And to your other question that you asked me, it is very interesting, though we weren't raised in the same home, we were raised in the same trauma, if you will. And people have teased me through the years because they don't know me well enough to know, we know you just want to be famous. And I go, wait a minute, you're so wrong about me. I want the work of what I do and what Dr. James does to be well known. I want the work. It's the work that drives me. And it's likened to what I say on just about every show. Howard Thurman's statement is stop asking what the world needs and ask yourself what makes you come alive. And that is for somebody that, I don't know about you, but years ago, in my early days of being a Science of Mind minister, and then having 2 suicides in my family, and then my mom's best friend taking her life, I had kind of an arrogance or not a broadened understanding and expansion of suicide. Probably like so many other people, I thought, what a selfish thing, and don't you know that you're going to wind up meeting you on the other side? You're still going to have to walk through your karma and because, you're grieving, you're in pain, and you just have these flippant answers. But yet, to evolve to a place that says, you know what, I may not have had suicide, but there's people that either take their life or allow their lives to be taken from them. And for 15 years, I was in the throes of alcohol for 15. So from age 14 to 29. So it's that kind of thing that I hid my light. I hid my light because I didn't want to stand out. I was scared of the voice I had heard at 5 saying, you came here for a message. Now, I heard whatever a 5-year-old said, and it wouldn't be fair for me to say these were the exact words. And people would say, God, you're so lucky. I went, well, maybe Yogananda was when he told his parents, but that wasn't the way it was in a small town with 1,200 people. They go, "You're weird. You're crazy." So I did too. I hid. I was afraid of being out loud or outspoken. But like you, life kept finding me, right? I would show up somewhere and the speaker wouldn't show up and they'd ask me to speak. It wasn't like, yay, I'm all in. But I'm glad that you said yes. And I'm glad that you have followed your journey and your path. And I applaud you with deep humility, right there for sure.
Oh, thank you, Temple. And I think that the thing that when you and I were speaking in Denver a few months ago, when I had the opportunity and the blessing to meet you in person, the thing that I came away with, and I think this is something that doesn't get enough in the circles that we tend to speak in and share a lot of our community experiences, and that is how much we don't give enough energy to the fact that physiology drives a lot of our psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that
Mm-hmm.
experience, I was always fairly athletic. Even when I was drinking and drugging, I was still I was still very much involved. In fact, I did my first Ironman when I was still drinking and drugging.
Mm-hmm.
And
All
it,
American. Smoking pot and doing booze. Oh yeah. Some of the best games I ever played. Don't tell your children that.
right. And and then I thought, oh my gosh, is this like the way that
Uh-huh.
I get a chance to say, you can do both. Look at you. You're
Yeah.
amazing. You did this whole thing while the night before, you dropped acid the night before, and here you are doing an Ironman the next morning. And I was like, no, that's not the way, actually. There might be even another way, because I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to outrun something or outbike or outswim something that you will never, ever do that. But what if you actually became still and said to yourself, what is it that this is all about?
Mm.
And I remember at that time, and I grew up in a small town like you did, Temple, in Vermont, where you just didn't leave the town. Usually, you kind of became indoctrinated into the
Mhm.
dis-ease of the town. But early in my 20s, I went to India. I spent time in Nepal. I spent time in Kathmandu. And the hardest thing I ever did was literally do my first dog tune, which was sitting still for 30 days in the monkey temple in Kathmandu. And I was freshly sober, and I hated every moment of that.
Wow. Hmm.
Every moment, because every demon, every voice, all the things. I finally had sat still long enough to listen to all the garbage that I was telling myself.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I think 30 days I popped out, and you pop out of the meditation, and there's this great Sanskrit word. You probably know this. And I think everyone is going to love this word because I think it's so good in the spiritual circles that we walk in. The Sanskrit word is Aram Bashara, which basically means all of us are heroes in the beginning,
Mm.
which
Wow.
basically suggests, who are you at the end? When you eulogize your day, when you eulogize your life, when someone is eulogizing you, did they say, oh, we had such great promise, such a great starter at things, but never finished things?
Mm.
Or I was in this place after 30 days of meditation. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm going to be a meditator. I'm staying here, and I'm going to be here in Kathmandu. I'm going to become a monk, shaving my hair. I'm here. And a meditation teacher says, not so fast, Buster, in sort of way, that way. Like I said, he said, you
Yeah.
are participating in your hero in the beginning right now. And if you really want to do something heroic, go home and deal with your shit. Go home
Mm.
and deal with your shit. And that was when the real sobriety became the hardest part, which was going back and family of origin work, getting back to where all the buttons will be pushed. And that is when I resumed the greater work of my life, which was starting to understand that there's a physiological component that, whether it's you're overcoming a limited belief, whether you're overcoming issues with alcohol, drugs, relationships where you continually put yourself in trauma reinforcement, whatever it might be, there's a case for physiology to be one of the things that we bring and then systematize it into our life. So the light turns on, even though our psychology may still be suffering in the psychology of whatever trauma. We still can't figure whether or not we're worthy to find our way through. But can our physiology illuminate in such a way that our energy says, you know what? I believe enough and I have enough hope that I will. And I now have the energy to do the deepest work of my life.
I love that. As you know, I sought out metaphysics, or it found me, let me say that, when I was 19. It was a real lifesaver because by then my sexuality was very confusing for me. There wasn't people I could talk about, and there's a whole story with that in my book, but I won't get into that because I also want to talk about your books and your up and coming new book today. But all that said, my story's kind of out there, all public about everything, but I found metaphysics and I naturally was metaphysical. So I found the teaching of metaphysics somewhat confusing at first. But one of the things that was really drumming in and tuning in was the, change your thinking, change your life. And I felt like that's very powerful. And I still do today. I feel like I need to get back into working with the law, the song, I fought the law and the law won. I get all that with the thinking, but I also realized that there was another element that I knew too many people in my life, including myself, that were deeply in the practice of change your thinking and your life would change. But then I observed that some people's lives didn't change that much. They did initially, like, wow, this is really cool stuff, or law of attraction, or all that. But then, dun, 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 here would come the deeper traumas and the deeper stuff. And so, like you on your journey, it found me in shamanism and understanding chakras and understanding deep-rooted pain and karmic pain and soul retrieval and all of those things to change your energy and your life will change, right? And what I love about people like you in the new thought, if I will, in that mainstream of self-help, advancement of your life, transforming your pain into your gain, and those kind of things, is I love people like you that are walking the earth in a real way, not just platitude teaching or cliches. There's nothing wrong with that. But I've yet to meet a person that's well-rounded, that is a person that has been able to avoid going deep within themselves. And I admire that about you and that part that you present as a clinician, as a human being, as with your work on Instagram. I love a lot of your videos and the videos you and your wife do, and you're all that and a slice of vegan cheese is what I say. But tell our audience about your books, 14 books. I mean, I talk about 5 and I think, whoa, that was a lot. 14? What are
Just
you
champ.
doing?
Well, you know what? Here's the
I
funny
need
part,
some
Temple.
B12.
Well, here's the interesting part. I'm dyslexic, so that is a big part of my writing.
You
I
can't
felt
be.
I am
Are you?
profoundly dyslexic. And so my first book, oh my gosh, I didn't have the resources. This is back, gosh, oh my goodness, almost 30 years ago, I wrote my first book and thought the grammar was good enough to not have to really put it through the paces that I do now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, I have, in fact, I'll post on Instagram. I have all the little yellow notes sticking out where all the punctuation or spelling errors. The book is probably 140 pages, and there's at least 172 errors. And
Course, yeah.
so what I love about that is that it sits over here in my bookshelf for reasons to remind me that we have this idea about what it is that we think we're putting out in the world. And being a student, as I love that quote by Howard Thurman, I've always said, be a student of what makes you come alive. Writing makes me come alive.
Wow.
Writing makes me feel so genuine. It makes me feel so authentically myself. I write in a stream of consciousness. That's how I love to write. So writing 14 books for a lot of people would be painstaking, but because I'm a channeler of what it is
Mm-hmm.
that's inside of me, and
Mm-hmm.
most people are, but I don't want to say that's unique or different just because I'm doing it. But literally, I can plow through 40 or 50 pages in a couple of hours, literally. And it just because I do a whole practice of breathing, some yoga, some Pilates, some other cool things, and then I write. And oh my goodness, it gives me a chance to
Mm-hmm.
access a part of my brain that goes, wouldn't this be interesting to write about? You've got a lot to say about this. Then boom.
Bam,
So it's
bam.
kind of how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I really want community to hear this specifically. I'm a huge believer that one of the greatest gifts we bring to life is getting in contact to that point in our life where we say, you know what? There's some type of soul contract that I definitely did sign because I'm here.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if I was to sign it in such a way that not necessarily what I did when I first came into this incarnation, but Temple, what if I actually this afternoon, we're here together, people are going to be listening when this is ready to go. We asked ourselves that simple question. Howard Thurman said, well, you're looking at the world right now and you say, gosh, what does the world need right now? Oh my gosh, when am I most flagrantly visible in a way that I see that kindness, that compassion, that loveliness come
Mm-hmm.
through? What is the precursor to that? What did I have to eat that day? Did I take a walk? Did I do a breathing practice? Did I pray? There's a pretty good chance we're going to see a system of how our light turned on if we are willing to take the time and really watch. I like to say our own personal ethnography, the one foot in our life, actively looking at the student that we are, and then the witness. The
Yeah.
other foot is in the witness and watching what it is that we could lose in spite of the way in which we are living. But most importantly, as we see things go away, what are we inviting in? So my books have been a system of basically how I've learned to live with the ideas of letting go of what no longer serves me, but more importantly, being very, very, very committed to the idea that all of us are here to do something with magic. And we're about here to alchemize what it is that contract asked of us.
Mm-hmm.
But in order for that contract to be fully realized, we have to see our self-care and our self-acceptance as the primary form of that social activism. That's what brings us awake.
Mm. What I hear about you is something that you and I deeply have in common, and that's the understanding that we are masters over our energy versus we are enslaved to it. And there's so many people I find through meeting and through encounters and through hearing them or through interviews that they use this language of I'm tired, I'm weary, those grandkids, I'm just worn out, I'm this, I'm that. And they believe in like an energy ration system,
Mm.
I only get so many rations at the beginning of the week, and they start then projecting, it always fascinates me when people on Monday say, well, I'm sick. I don't know if I can make it on Friday. It's like, it's Monday. Oh, I know, but and so it is a very strong dynamic, and it becomes a habit which then creates constant manifestations of things have to be hard to be worthy, and there's this whole language around that. And what I see in you and what I am very clear about practicing is that if I am engaged in something and I feel a sense of being tired, more than likely it's not for my path to be doing it in the first place. Because when you're really pure in your, not pure in being, because, that's a whole different radio show. We'll save that to another special time,
Yes, we will.
ladies
I've
and
got work to
gentlemen.
do
We'll
before
save
we.
that because we don't want to shock you off the show. No, but when we talk about the clarity of energy, there's always so much more to have. And that's what I heard with you talking about when you sit down and you're writing your 40 and 50 pages in a couple of hours in one sitting. You're not in your head about it. You're not going, yeah, but I didn't get much sleep last night. And you won't ever hear me say that. because that was last night. It's a brand new day, So I really admire that about you. Of your books that you've written and the new one that we will get to coming out in December, do you have any? I've heard many authors that write a lot of books. They say they're all like my children. Do you have a couple of favorites? And if you do, why?
Gosh, that's a beautiful question, Temple. I think the one that I love the most is the one that has the most mistakes. I think
Mm,
it's the one that was really probably, if anyone was to read it, it's my worst book in terms of punctuation, grammar, maybe
mm,
even the way in which it was laid out. But that was such a trust walk for me. That was such a
mm,
hard thing to do. I heard all the voices like, "Who do you think you are? You have no business writing a book. You have no business thinking this book even belongs because there's even something worthy of sharing." All the voices.
mhm,
But I really, really gave myself permission to overcome myself.
mm,
So when I see that book on the shelf, and easily the least compelling of all my books, it's the one that absolutely served as a catalyst for me to really lean into what it meant for me to be a storyteller. And so all my books tell different types of stories, but that one tells a story more for myself to realize you absolutely need to tell that story for yourself. You needed to see that book come into manifestation. You needed to actualize that book for yourself. That was a permission giver. That was the one that encouraged a level of hope. That book came into being when literally just, a few years after that, so many magical things started to happen in my life. And I really believe that book was a ticket almost to my
mm,
self-esteem and my confidence to say,
mhm.
oh, yeah, you could do that too. You did that. You could do that too. And I think for your community who is so about, looking at self-actualization, and I loved you said Yogananda earlier. I read the autobiography of a yogi my first time when I was 16. I read it again when I was 24, and I think I've read it at least 20 times since then. It is my
Mhm.
favorite book for so many reasons. But there's one particular passage that he speaks to in his book. He talks about a hermitage, which is basically his idea that you need to figure out your spiritual way to the depth that you bring it everywhere you go.
Mm,
And I think that is something that you and I have seen so much in our travels where we sometimes see, and we even ourselves, my gosh, I have left my hermitage some places and ended up in a place I'm going, oh my gosh, where's my faith? Where's my hope? Where's my connection to spirit? Where is it? But lately, and I'll say I've gotten much better making sure I equip myself every morning to make sure my hermitage is absolutely with me. So if I'm going to the television station to do something, or I'm going to do a presentation, or I'm going upstairs to see my wife, and I've already been up for 2 hours doing my practice, my hermitage comes with me. And
mm,
I think that's something that people today, especially people who grew up in more of a religious way, in which, there was a Sunday morning where there was your hermitage, you walked in the church and you were part of the hermitage. What do we do on Monday morning when we really need God? What do we
right.
do on, Monday afternoon when we're in traffic and we're trying to get home to put our face on to make sure that we present ourselves? I've I have a practice that I started doing with my patients. When I started seeing patients, my practice kind of more from being more clinical, like let's talk about your cholesterol, let's talk about these other things, to what you do each and every morning to systematize your self-care. How do you actually embrace a level of love first thing in the day that becomes a demonstration of how the choices you make from that point on becomes your medicine? And
Mm,
we had this practice that every door we walk through in Temple, I believe that I lost count, but on average, I think I walk through maybe 270 doors a day, bedroom to bedroom, bedroom to kitchen, threshold, threshold, threshold. And I have this prayer that I do, and I was teaching my patients this. It was every time you pass over a threshold, utter under your breath or even out loud if you want to, what would love do now?
mm.
What
Yeah,
would
that's
love
great.
do now? And if that is the way in which it ignites that connection to every room you walk into, metaphorically or in real life, how does that elicit for you, and how does that bring you to life? So when you look
Mm.
at your partner, when you look at your kids, when you look at your dog, and we're rescue lovers, we've got dogs here in the house that, they really know that when we walk into the house, the first thing that we're going to do is, what does love do now? We get on our knees, we hug them, we kiss them, we do the things. And you realize more and more that the way in which Yogananda talked about carrying your hermitage, it's just a state of awareness. And
Mhm.
it's not that distance that we really equate saying, oh my gosh, I haven't been in church in 6 weeks. You know what? You haven't been to church for whatever reason, but you were in church all of your life if you answer that question, what does love do now? Oh,
Totally.
I'm in church right now. When I
Hmm.
live the answer, when I give myself permission to walk into that answer, I'm in church. I'm in my hermitage. The work is here now.
There's a that's profound. And there's a couple of things that come to mind about that. One of the things we always said in religious science was, my mind is my church, and what I
Mm,
believe is my religion. My mind is my church, and what I believe is my religion. And I was telling a couple of spiritual leaders yesterday this joke that to me is so cute, about this man that's been deserted for many years on an island, and they finally come up to rescue him, and they're just fascinated, that he has so much energy and that he's doing so well and that he's survived, all these things that did not seem survivable. But that being said, so they walk up and they go, oh, that's a nice area right there. He says, yes, that's my house. They said, oh, well, what's that building over there? And he said, well, that's my church. Oh, how cool is that? So you got strength and you got faith. Well, what's the other building? And he said, well, that's where I used to go to church.
that is so good.
I
That is
love
so,
that.
so.
I just have such the biggest laugh, because when we can embody that, like you're saying, it's the spirit within us. And buildings often create containers, often create division, often create separation. Whereas the church of mind and what I believe, it's oneness, it's love. I would say more so it's love. And we've had lots of opportunities in our nation and in our world lately to shine love. That's for sure.
My goodness. And isn't it something right now where, when you made that statement earlier, and it's so true about how people equate on a Monday saying, well, gosh, I'm not feeling good, so I don't know how Friday is going to work for me. Or
Right.
or pre-gaming, to the extent that we say, well, historically, this hasn't been something that's given me the things that I like to have, and so energetically, I'm not feeling there. Or,
Hmm.
for many people, when you hit 60, there's a threshold of vitality that we start to romance in this idea. Well, this is when I start to downshift.
Yeah.
This is when I start to see I'm acclimating towards the consensus of what 60 or 70 or 80 looks like. And I'm in my early 60s now, and the thing I'm loving more than anything is looking at the research around how it is that something that you and I think we spoke of back in Denver when we were talking about, like this idea that we have used to systematically give our power away, which is
Hmm.
age, and how we chronologically
Yep.
equate a certain age to a certain level of vitality. And I became fascinated when I was in med school. The thing that I really came away more than anything with is that if you really do have a real desire to exceed your energy expectation, you can absolutely predictably do that if you are willing to consider what it is that this body, this temple wants to be. And we think about the number one biomarker for aging, which is muscle, and how it's a voluntary tissue that we lose when we decide, well, I'm 70, I don't exercise any longer, I don't lift weights,
Hmm.
or I don't do a push up, I don't do a plank. Well, when we decide at 70 we don't do that, the muscle says, oh, so I don't perform any longer. And therefore, we're going to start aging a whole lot faster. And I
Yeah.
think this is the thing that in science of mind, I was always fascinated with the fact that we didn't talk about that enough. And I think our movement is in dire need of speaking to the vitality of what it is that this congregation could be outpicturing to the world right now. Because we intellectually and spiritually have phenomenal gifts and talents, but there is something about the currency of vitality that transcends so many things where people have, to your point, the silo is built, the separation is established. Well, energy is a currency of connection and community that really does have a way of navigating around words and dogma and things and finding each other's soul. And I'm really, really working diligently in my own life. And when I'm working with people and clients, I always begin with physiology and say, let's talk about the work that you would love to do in the world. Do you want to be a healer? Do you want to alchemize your energetics? How would you love to see this manifest in creating a community? Well, let's start with how your energy is performing in you and how that becomes the channel and the currency that you bring people together with. And oh my gosh, people start going, so I have a lot to say about that, really? Like I have a way to determine that? And I said, not only do you, it's your primary responsibility as a spiritual being to make sure your energy is absolutely vibrating at a level that transcends dogma, that transcends the way we've put ourselves in these little boxes of comfort. We open those boxes with our energy. It's a thing that transcends all.
It is, and you're so right. I mean, that's a door that we could get a collective group of people and we could start a movement all unto its own. And to me, it's constantly teaching people how I want to be treated. It's a constant thing. Like I started, I was going to a dentist of regularity, and so I go back for teeth cleaning, and it's like I felt like she was shouting in my ears, "Have you fallen lately? Have you had an accident? Have you gone to the hospital?" And I said, "Excuse me?" Well, we're required to ask everybody that now. I said, well, if you need to ask that of me, then I don't need to come here anymore, because
Oh my goodness.
that is not my welcome mat. That is not my door. I love when, or people will go, "Oh, I heard you're retired." It's like, retired and just getting started, so it's a constant. I don't say it begrudgingly. I think it's important, like you're saying, that we're always messengers for what we stand for. I had someone come in with a life insurance policy, and I thought, oh my God, I got the prettiest blood. Oh God, it's so beautiful. And she's looking at me, and I go, you don't understand, as a vegan and the work I do for that kind of blood. And she goes, and do you have this? And do you have that? And do you have arthritis? And do you have that? And do you have that? And I go, here's the thing. And I told her 3 times, and she'd still say, "If you had cancer, you're supposed to." I say, here's the thing. You can take a pen and you can draw all the way through it, and you can put NA, not accepted, not applicable. And it's just the greatest feeling in the world, is that, like you're saying, if you're willing to make a commitment, if you're willing to change a paradigm. I guess I'm Dr. James. I guess I've been too much of a rebel in my life that, it's like I would always tend to go the other way. I mean, and or question it. And I wasn't going to be a Baptist because my daddy was a Baptist and his dad was a Baptist and his grandmother was a Baptist. It's like, why am I a Baptist? I mean, we have people now that they would never consider like country over party, or what is called forthright now, right? Or they, like you said, they're so, or with people with sobriety. I did a talk on that not too long ago. It's like, because sometimes people apply the word sobriety to, oh my God, you're going to be miserable. oh my God, it's going to be so terrible. And you're just preoccupied, and everywhere you travel, you got to fund a meeting. And I'm not the kindest about that. I'd say, my God, if that was my life and I was still enslaved, I'd just drink. At least that was, kind of fun.
Oh, I
But
love
it's
that, Temple. I love
right,
that.
right. But
Yes.
it's a paradigm of belief. And you're right. I mean, there's so many people now exceeding that number scale because it is a number and it's just a constant teaching. And somebody, told me not long ago, I said, oh my gosh, and my friend, and this one died, and they start giving me like the choir song of, well, it's your age. And I go, that's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Thank you for sharing. But I've been losing friends since I'm 5 years old. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I know a lot of people and I open my heart to a lot of people. It's not just, so it's this ongoing thing about age. It's like in America, bodies and sex. It's an obsession, right? When it's so natural, it's just blown out of proportion. However, as we heal the idea of that you're aging, we also heal the banking accounts of a lot of people that pay because they don't know naturally they can produce being young, right? So it's $1 trillion industry. So you have that other piece with it in pharma. But anyway, you just hit that little spot, little Temple Hayes on Fire for Life. I'm like, woo, you're talking my language because it's so upsetting that people give up. They give
It
up.
is.
They
And
give
I
up.
think let's just do a quick piece on vegetables together right now because
Okay.
you and I are passionate about our vegetables. Well,
Yes.
there is this antioxidant. You're probably wildly familiar. I'm sure you have the highest levels of anyone I know. It is called glutathione. So
Yes.
glutathione, I like to call her the queen of the antioxidant army. She is the one who she's brilliant, she's sexy, she's strong, she's just she's a badass. She's just a
Right.
badass.
Right.
And she basically recruits all the other antioxidants to play at the highest level.
Hmm.
When you look at people who have had blood work done well into their 90s, people who've been deemed as, oh my goodness, your vitality is amazing. We want to see, is there any type of thing that we can kind of look at as a denominator across the board of these high vital people, 80s, 90s, into the early 100s? There was a strong correlation to how much glutathione they had in their system, the glutathione they had
Hmm.
coursing through their bodies. And glutathione is a huge fan of cruciferous vegetables. Glutathione loves plants. The more that we are putting plants in our body, our glutathione levels will find their way up, along with two other things. To say very, very zealous hugging, which augments your oxytocin level. So you've got glutathione, you've got your oxytocin, and then giving yourself permission to be somewhat of an iconoclast. And I mean that from a
Hmm.
personality of looking at the icons in your life that you say, oh my gosh, that has been so long outdated. Like you saying, everyone's been a Baptist, therefore I should be not.
Not.
Everyone has been drinking in my family for generations, therefore I should be the one who breaks the cycle.
Exactly.
You become the iconoclast and anything that you know that keeps you shackled to your own self oppression. And you look at glutathione, you look at oxytocin, you look at the way your neurochemistry and this innate pharmacy that we have inside of us that's open 24 hours a day. But all it asks of us is a deep level of self acceptance and a way in which we care for this temple. Love that you're that. There's never been a more perfect first name than anyone in my life than it is for you. Yeah. I mean,
It's
right?
like, is there a clue there?
Is there a little personification of this? Yes. And I think, Temple, this is the way in which Spirit is asking all of us right now to lean into what it is that science is now giving us permission to embrace and spirituality is giving us a chance to demonstrate. Embrace and demonstrate. We know that there are ways in correlating with what science is giving us as foundation, but then we have to give ourselves permission to say, you know what? I'm putting this on. I'm putting it in me. I'm wearing this. I'm going to go out in the world and demonstrate it. I'm going to be the one that literally people look at and go, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing this? How old are you? And then you go, it has nothing to do with that.
Right. It has
It has
nothing to do with that.
nothing to do with that. And I really believe strongly the work that you've been doing since I discovered you is that you are a permission giver. You've given people so many ways in which they could find their way into our movement, because you weren't just like, here's the door. This is how you get in. This is how metaphysics work. This is how spirituality happens. This is how personal growth happens. I think you've been a curator of so many different doors. And in that way, so many people have had permission to find our movement. And I think the next evolution of our movement is for all of us who deeply believe in what we're doing here, beyond science of mind, but more into the idea of being catalysts for the movement across the world, is putting it on and into our bodies and having this energy be the demonstration, having it be the door, having it be the welcoming mat, because there is nothing sweeter and more benevolent than someone's kindness coming through in a vital, transcendent way.
Wow. Yes, that's so powerful. And you're exactly correct. I mean, for me to just say, okay, so what I'm answering to my calling is I stand behind a lectern and I say what I've been guided to do, and people come up and they say, oh, that was nice, or what are you going to talk about today? And I go, I don't know yet, but we'll see, or whatever. It was like, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, a lot of people live their lives that way. But for me, mine was more and has continued to be, how do we bring these principles into the sober magazines? How do we bring these principles into the parenting magazines? How do we bring these principles into my little tribe that I have in Kenya that I just love? They're like my family. We got two little girls going to school. We got some goats, we got some cows, and it's how to do just little dips here and there of bringing principles out in a space of um, activism, yes, but I don't even like to call it activism. It's called being a freaking human being. It's called being responsible for the space of what comes and walks, right in front of you. And that's always been my turn on button. And thank you for seeing it. Because yes, I never make light of community. I think community is very important. I know you agree with me. Community, one reason I continue to be part of one or involved in one is I really feel it keeps us in that relatability as human beings. But that being said, the joy for me has to been able to see you as Dr. James, as a clinician, touching people with the principle-based reality into their everyday lives. That lights me up, in film and movie, on TV, or whatever way that we can show it. And I was talking the other night, I know you've been with Deepak a good bit. I was in a film with him about suicide, the Never Alone film. And because every 40 seconds, someone in the world takes their lives. And sometimes that second is smaller. That number is much smaller. But I was talking about how, the other thing that people don't tell you about spirituality is that because they give the fluff and the frou-frou, because yes, you're in your early 60s. I'm in my mid 60s. Can't tell it. Oh my God. However, we have put forth decisions, shifted paradigms, worked on trauma, deep dived into things that don't feel so great, and done work and continue to do so that that tree we planted 20 years ago, you can tell it's growing, right? However, what a lot of people I find want to talk about with spirituality is the goo-goo, the fun stuff. And that there are sweet spots to that. But I don't think enough teachers out there tell you that spirituality means a couple of things. One is you do not replace your humanity, you become more human.
Mm.
You become more human. And we need to talk about that. You become more sensitive. When we talk about awakening and consciousness and awareness and enlightenment, it's all beautiful. And I believe in all of it. But I also know as we are in the practice, we feel things more. Like you and I were talking about before the show started, I believe that spirituality is more than, oh, Dr. James called me and said, oh, Temple, you're my buddy. I know you have properties in Florida. Are your properties okay? And I go, yeah, we're good. Uh-uh.
Mm-mm.
I, I don't
Mm-mm.
feel that's what it is. I'm sorry. I feel like it's, you know what? My properties are good, but you know what, Dr. James? There are thousands of properties that are not good. There's lives that are not good. And let's do some work there. Let's do some energy work. Let's do some prayer work. Let's do some phone calls. Let's look at what, blah, blah, blah. So that's one thing. I feel that I remember walking in the room one day with a couple of people, and I said, I don't know why I'm feeling this, but I think something big's getting ready to happen. This was
Mm.
years ago. I didn't call this one, and nor am I thinking that's going to be my profession or anything. I'm not going to get a card, but I just could feel something, and I said, I don't know what it is, but it's not. I just feel like something's getting ready to happen. The next day, I walk out on the driveway when there was tragedy that would happen. St. Petersburg Times would put a newspaper on your driveway, and it was tsunami hits Japan. And
Mm.
I could feel that. And I don't think we talk about that enough, because it's important to be aware and to feel that, not that anything has to have power over us, but there's a power within us that can tune in to such things. Right. And so it's a big thing for me because I think people need to understand the responsibility that comes with being someone that represents God.
Wow.
you
I feel
know?
like that right there, most important point of today's discussion. And I think it's also the thing that right now all spirit is asking of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we've given a lot of credence to the ideas that at one time, I know when I first started my spiritual path, I wanted nothing but the flowers and the fluff
Me
because
too.
I did not want to look underneath and see how much that trauma of my childhood and all the other pieces to my narrative and its relationship to every decision I was making. And if I could just gloss it over and cover it up with as much fairy tales
Mm-hmm.
of how I wish it would have been different and how I'm the guy and that's, I'm in recovery and things are amazing. There is not a day in my life where something hard doesn't come in. Every day, something hard
Yeah.
comes in. And I think spirituality, and that's why I'm such a big believer that if we really do the deepest work of our life, physiologically, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, cognitively, we will have the opportunity to move through everything with a level of discernment where I think, to your point, when something's moving for us, we don't question it, we move towards it. And if we
Mm-hmm.
also know that if there's work to be doing, there's a shovel in one hand and there's a hammer in the other. I can go back historically and try to figure out what happened when I was 7, which makes me sometimes feel a certain thing when I'm 62. Or I get a chance to say, you know what? The shovel no longer is serving me. I'm using the hammer now. What do I want to build? And
Mm-hmm.
I think these are all part of the spirituality that I love to practice every single day. It is a lot to be said. There's this part of our brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, which I think she is definitely one of the most spiritually awakened parts of our brain. And what she asks for us every single day, get up and do something hard.
Mm-hmm.
Get up and do something that's uncomfortable. Do something that you know is going to put you up against your edges, whether it's taking a walk when you don't want to take a walk, finishing your hot shower with 10 seconds of cold water, having that difficult conversation with your lover, whatever the case may be. Do it conscientiously. Choose to do the hard thing. And what tends to happen? our microbiome, our physiology, our soul literally looks to be a beneficial presence on the planet in spite of how much hard work is entailed with being that kind of a spiritual person versus someone who just saying, oh my gosh, give me the good stuff. I just want to have the good stuff. The good stuff is the tangible texture of being fully awakened to the work that's right in front of us and having the courage and the deep sense of love of self to say, I know I can do this.
Mm.
And I want to. I want to be full of love. I want to be full of grit. I want to be full of a gritty gratitude and grace. And I'm going to give myself permission to be the guy that says, you know what? There is no challenge that I'm not up for, because in between the interstitial challenges, there's grace, there's joy, there's love, there's fluffiness, there's flowers. And my God, that's why I believe that the work that you've always done and the work I aspire to do is walk the planet in such a way they go, oh my God, that guy carries his scars like they're trophies. He is not afraid to wear them proudly. But at the same time, he doesn't use them as an alibi for his deficits.
Mm-hmm. It's like Buddha, or like you or like me. When people say, I love hearing you laugh, it's like, oh, I want to laugh like that. And I go, well, it's called walking through your pain, buddy. It's called walking through your life.
Oh,
Because
so good.
that's where the deep joy comes from, because joy is an acronym, just open yourself. So deep
Mm.
pain, deep joy, deep love, deep hurt. I mean, they go together, they walk hand in hand. And that's the beauty of it. And the other thing that keeps coming up for me, because my little puppy is in the other room. In July, my dog of 12 years died. And within not even a month, another dog appeared in my energy field and went, I'm your puppy. So I was thinking earlier when you were talking about you get up earlier and you're doing your writing and everything, I thought, and those of you that are listening, if you're not doing it naturally, get a puppy because every morning at 6 o'clock, they're like, time to get up. It's been too long of a night. Let's play. And anyway, I love talking with you. I'd love to do more shows if you would be willing, because we've just touched the surface. So I'd love to
You know what we
grab you
need to
to
do?
tune in.
You
What
know
do
what we
we
need
need
to
to
do?
do?
We need to set an intention to invite our collective communities to a place where we practice this together.
Okay. I love that.
We eat the food, we do the movement, we chant, we pray, we sweat, we cry, we do it.
Okay.
And we systematize a level of spirituality that integrates the type of physiology that allows us to continually say yes to the path that we're on. That would be a phenomenal honor to do that
Mm-hmm.
with you. And I
Yes.
think we would be amazed how many people would say, oh my gosh, thank God, finally someone's doing it.
Well, it would be an honor for me too, definitely. So let's talk and write me and let's do a brainstorming of when that could be in the spring and where we would do it if it's in your area. I always love coming to Denver. So let's figure that out. And we have Santa
Beautiful.
Barbara too here, of course. But let's figure that out, or both who's to say?
I
So
think
I love that. And that's really strong in my energy field right now, is to be part of a retreat center, to be part of a healing center. And I'm feeling it, coming. It just feels we're close. But in the meantime, let's create that. And I love that. So tell us about your book that's coming out in December. What's the name of it? And what's the gist of it?
thank you for asking. I'll make this brief because I know you're wanting to wrap up. But here's Temple. This is the book I should have written. I should have written this book a long time ago, but I hadn't done enough work to do it. So I finally feel like I have done enough work to write this book. The book is called DM, which is the Greek for day. And it's basically the question I get most when I'm presenting or when I used to see patients actively. Just tell me what you do. Tell me
Mm.
how you lead your day. Take me through the circadian rhythm of a spiritual person whose physiology is very vibrant. The
Wow.
book is that. It is basically,
Wow.
how do you take your day to help the highest quality sleep, the most amazing meditation? What food do you want to put in to get your mitochondria firing on all cylinders? How do you want to get this inner pharmacy to be predictably enlightened? That
Mm.
is what the book is all about.
Wow. Well, will you get with Andrea, please, the producer
Yes,
of the show, and pop it in there right in January? Maybe with things going on, we ought to wait to the third or fourth week. Just saying. But I would love to have the book and it be about the book for the show. That
that
would
would
be
be amazing.
wonderful. And
I
any
would
way
love
I
that.
can support you, I want to. So please know that. I would love to, and I'd love a copy, a JPEG of the book, and I'll promote it on my end too, because
Thank you.
you're so my vibe, you're so my story, what I believe, what I feel, what I practice, and I've been so inspired by you today. I mean, two or three times I went, you stepping on my toes, stepping on my toes. Please step on my toes. I love it. I love it. But that's who you are. Because of who you are, what you say carries, truly, it carries significance and it has meaning. And so I just,
Thank you.
on behalf of all the people on the planet that are wanting to be with more people like you that are on fire for life, I just say thank you with such grace and thank you for being who you are. You are truly a difference maker. And I'm so grateful that we're alive at the same time and that we're really alive at the same time. And together we have 77 years of sobriety.
How how
Woohoo!
how beautiful is that? And because all those very things to me, I want to come back to you with something. Thank you for being my teacher.
Mm.
Thank you for being someone who I couldn't wait every month to open up a magazine that was a lifeline for me to see what you were sharing to
No.
help me not to feel alone, to help me to feel like I had a kindred spirit. And then to lay eyes on you in person this past spring was such a demonstration of faith for me because you were every bit of what I imagined you would feel like to be in
No.
your space. And for you, BB, the whole experience for me that day, I walked away and I said, you know what? That is such a faith builder for me.
Wow.
That is a faith builder for me to witness you as I did and to feel that as I did. So I just
Wow.
want you to know those things mean the world to me, Temple. So thank you.
Mm. Thank you. And I'm glad that this is recorded because on a rainy day, I mean, we don't have them often in California, but when I do have a rainy day, I'm going to go back and listen to what you just said. You touched my soul and my heart. And on behalf of everybody that's tuning in, whether now or later, I urge you to share this with your friends and remind everybody of what is really possible. And thank you for being with us on the show.